What's up, guys? Steven's Bear here, and we're back with another video. So in this video, I'll give my opinion on some of the points discussed on a podcast between Tucker Carlson and Ernest Roots to illustrate what happens when you only listen to one side of the story, because a lot of key information and context was left out in this conversation to make things look and seem a lot worse than they actually are, which is propaganda 101.
It's only been, I think, in American media in the past couple of months that stories have come out of South Africa that a lot of Americans have read that actually the country seems to be falling apart and that the government is kind of genocidally racist.
Yeah.
And then President Trump in the past month has basically said the same thing. And it's shocking to a lot of people, I think. How bad it is and how racist it is, far more than apartheid ever was.
We're not even a minute into this almost 2-hour podcast, and there's already some false claims being made. Tucker states that the government is genocidal and racist and is far worse than the apartheid government ever was. This is factually incorrect. It was found that over 20,000 people were killed by the apartheid government for protesting apartheid. There is currently no record of our current government using state resources such as the police and the military to target and kill white people. So stating that our current government is genocidal is factually incorrect. Stating that our current government is even more racist than what the apartheid government was is factually incorrect. It's unfortunate that Ernest didn't push back on this statement like he does other statements later on in the video.
And I was more familiar with the details of the Mandelas.
Yes.
But I think most Americans, I don't think, had any idea. Like, what was Nelson Mandela on Robben Island for? What was he in prison for?
Well, if
for being black, or was there another reason?
Well, literally. So I have children, and they are taught in schools, and the government prescribes what children should learn in history. And so the official version is he went to prison because he was a good leader, and the government didn't like that. I should say that he certainly was the best that the ANC has ever had to offer.
Yes.
But the reason why he went to prison is because they started Umkhonto weSizwe, which was the military wing of the ANC, which became involved with military actions in South Africa with an attempt to overthrow the government. And they actually, and this is I'm quoting from the ANC's own policy documents that's on their own website. So they had this operation when they started, which was used in the Rivonia trial against Nelson Mandela. It was a strategy called Operation Mayibuye, and the slogan of this operation was "Shamelessly we shall attack the weak, and shamelessly we shall flee from the strong." So those were the circumstances in the 1960s.
Pretty noble policy statement there. We'll attack the weak and flee from the strong.
Yeah, and it's still on their website. You can find it there. So that was an attempt at an armed uprising.
There's been this growing trend lately, especially from the West or Western people, to paint Mandela as a terrorist for going against and trying to overthrow the apartheid government. Context in this point is very important. During apartheid, when black people were protesting peacefully, they will be gunned down and murdered in the streets by the apartheid police and military. The Sharpeville massacre and later on the Soweto uprising are two very famous examples of this. Now, after the Sharpeville massacre, where over 60 people were murdered in the streets for protesting peacefully, this is when Umkhonto weSizwe was formed in the ANC, which is the ANC's military wing, which was the idea to take up arms and fight the government violently, because peaceful protesting was not working and it was getting many people killed.
On March 21st, 1960, Zacchaeus Mayseals joined 3,000 other black South Africans to protest one of the most hated restrictions against the nation's black majority, passbooks, which controlled their every movement. Lydia Mahubuke remembers. Even if you had a visitor in your house, she said, you'd have to report them to the police station. They would tell you how long your visitor could stay. Sharpeville's residents gathered peacefully in front of the police station without those passbooks. Their objective, to be arrested. But police opened fire, shooting protesters in the back as they ran for their lives.
This was the first shot hit me.
It hit you right here. Abram Mafoking still has a bullet lodged in his spine. What were you thinking?
We were all in fear. There was no time to think. We just trying to escape.
In 2 minutes, police fired more than 1,300 bullets. 69 people lay dead in the streets.
Military methods to fight the government was a result of non-violent protesting not working and the aggression of the apartheid government towards protesters.
And so during that time that Mandela was in prison, I'm 55, so I remember this very, very well. His wife was effectively his spokesman, Winnie Mandela.
Yeah.
And she was lionized in the United States. She was a hero. She was the mother of an emerging nation, a woman of peace and decency, really a transcendent figure, a holy figure. And then it turned out that actually she was a murderer who had, burned to death or supervised the murder of a bunch of different people. Tell us about that.
Yes. So let me firstly say that I have a lot of respect for Nelson Mandela. I think in terms of his efforts and as I say, I think he's the best the ANC has ever had to offer. Winnie Mandela, his wife, not so much. So she's been involved with a lot of things, including what was called the Mandela Football Club.
Yes.
Which was a gang that was involved with violence and killings of innocent people. And she famously said at a political rally, with our necklaces and our matches, we will liberate this country.
Yes.
Which, of course, is a reference to the necklace murders, which was very popular in South Africa and still happens in South Africa. That's when you take a rubber tire, you fill it with petrol or gasoline, and you put it around someone's neck so that it's bound around their arms, and you set it on fire. And then you stone that person while he's burning to death. And that happened. There were, I think, 500 or 700 people were killed like that during political violence in South Africa. And she encouraged this. Initially, she denied it, and then it came out that it was recorded of her saying this. It's very bizarre that someone like Winnie Mandela is a hero today.
And was a hero then. And so that, to me, was a sign that these are not, liberators, that they're oppressors.
Winnie Mandela is a hero in South Africa because she also became a symbol for the anti-apartheid struggle, especially in the time when Mandela was in prison. She was known as the voice of defiance against white minority government rule. Winnie was fierce and more aggressive than Nelson was, endorsing more aggressive methods of fighting the government. She played a major role in continuing the anti-apartheid struggle in Nelson's absence. This is why she is a hero here in South Africa.
Power to the people! Power to the people!
Nobody announced the start of her campaign. She just arrived in the middle of a quiet meeting in Soweto and set it alight. Her first political speech here in nearly 15 years.
I am back with you where I belong.
It was not far short of a call to arms.
This is now the right time to take your country. We shall use the same language the boys are using against us.
While she was speaking, the army sent 2 armoured columns into Soweto, a show of strength and a different campaign to win hearts and minds. Mrs. Mandela, unnoticed by the security forces, slipped out of Soweto to make another speech on the West Rand. The news had gone ahead.
We cleaned up the white man's children. We could have killed them any day we wanted to.
And the most frightening threat of all.
With our necklaces, we shall liberate this country.
The latest victim of the necklace died this weekend after the bodies of unrest victims were found in unmarked coffins. The undertaker's home was burnt down, a petrol-soaked tire was put around her neck and set alight. Death by the necklace, reserved for so-called collaborators.
The ANC liberated South Africa from apartheid, and in 30 years of ruling, the ANC government have not targeted or oppressed any group of people in South Africa in the same way that the apartheid government did. So to say that the ANC government is worse than the apartheid government is factually incorrect.
One of the reasons that I find this story so fascinating is not simply because, it's like the classical, irony of history. This, group comes in with one aim and then achieves exactly the opposite. We're going to have we're going to end racism and then make racism much worse. But also because they have gone about it in a way that's almost like American, with the same language, the same diversity
absolutely.
is our strength kind of sloganeering. and it's had the same result, which is to basically kill whites. And I mean, that's just true.
Racism is not worse now than it was in apartheid. The ANC have always pushed for the inclusion of all people, to the point where some black people may feel like the ANC have sold out. The chanting of killing white people comes from more radical individuals and political parties, but not from the government.
So there's a theory. There was this video that just went viral on social media of this guy talking about how white people are subhuman and all of that. And they get, well, this is taught at universities in South Africa. There's a theory called Azania critical theory. Azania is a Pan-African word for South Africa. And they actually get this from Americans like Robin DiAngelo, who's this Ibrahim X. Kendi, Ta-Nehisi Coates, these people. They get it from them, and then they put an African flavor on it, which essentially boils down to a theory that justifies the targeting and extermination of the white minority. And so the theory, to summarize, goes more or less like this. There's an African term called Ubuntu, which means brotherliness, or it's about your internal humanity. It's a Zulu term. And the theory goes that white people are incapable of having Ubuntu. But Ubuntu is the essence of humanity. So if you don't have it, you're not truly human. So it boils down that the logical conclusion is that if you kill a white person, then you did not actually commit murder. So this is not widely believed in South Africa, but this is taught at universities by university professors, and it's certainly believed by radical elements.
It's a predicate for genocide. I mean, it's always the same in we're watching in parts of the world now. They're not fully human, right? So we can kill them. Because they're fully human, then it's of course a grave sin to kill them.
I've personally been to university, and I spent 5 years there attaining my degree and my honors degree. And this is the first time I hear about universities teaching students that white people are subhuman or inhumane. This is the first time I hear about this. And I've been to university. I've also never heard anybody say this out in public. I've never heard students talk about this. I'm not even sure if this is true or not, but from my experience, universities do not teach this theory to students. Well, I'm glad that Ernest stated that this is not a widely accepted theory in South Africa, because most people do not believe that white people are inhumane. Again, you need to emphasize that it's only fringe and radical individuals and groups that believe and talk about these kinds of things. I also appreciate the fact that Ernest corrected Tucker Carlson multiple times when Tucker Carlson was insinuating that the government is committing genocide.
It's a predicate for genocide.
Yeah, well, we've always been saying that there's not a genocide in South Africa.
Okay, so again, no one wants to use the term, but this is genocide. I mean, that's what that is. It's like targeting a group of people for extinction, elimination on the basis of immutable characteristics. Like, I don't know is there another genocide definition I'm not aware of?
Well, I think you can say there are threats of that happening. There's not a genocide happening in South Africa.
No, I'm not saying there is. I'm saying that's where it's going.
And that's why I think they've gone so ballistic after the recent comments by Trump and people like Elon Musk and so.
Oh, have they? I'm sorry, I don't follow it that closely. Have they? Those comments were noticed in South Africa?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the biggest story in South Africa at the moment.
Really? And what are they saying?
Well, they're saying that the organizations that I was involved with at the time have committed treason. That we've been charged for treason.
You've been charged with treason?
Yeah.
For what?
For speaking, well, among others, for me speaking with you about what's happening.
That's treason?
In South Africa. Yeah, because it's bad mouthing your country. That's the argument.
It's not the government that has charged Ernest and AfriForum for treason. Ernest and AfriForum have not been charged with treason as yet. There is an investigation by the Hawks to see if it is possible to charge them with treason. And it is false to say that you're being charged with treason for bad-mouthing the government. That is completely false. There are many individuals out there, Dricus du Plessis being one of them, who have bad-mouthed the government on the international stage, but they are not being charged with treason.
Our government, I would go the worst government in the world by a long shot. I would say our government is as far ahead in being the worst government in the world than Max Verstappen is at this stage the Formula One champion of the world. Nobody's going to compete with him. We are truly exceptionally being a government. To fix anything that they screwed up this far.
It's going to take lifetimes.
It takes lifetimes, yeah, it won't be a mine. But, I mean, there's a lot of great people doing a lot of great work.
Yeah.
Trying to save it, but no, our government is terrible, but I have to say, I do admire the tenacity at which they screw up the country. And
yeah, it's so good. It's so bad, it's good.
listen, if you
it's
look
like our
at it,
government.
it's astonishing.
It's actually
You
just
look-
all bad, though.
It's not at all like your government.
Ours is pretty bad.
No. You can't even comprehend.
What AfriForum is doing is threatening South Africa's sovereignty by getting America to coerce South Africa into changing its policies through sanctions. And many individuals here in South Africa are seeing that as a treasonous act.
Treason is treated as a common law offense, and it normally happens where you try to overthrow the government or you coerce the government by violence into action or into inaction or violating, threatening the existence, independence of a country. And then the last one is obviously when you now sort of have changing the constitutional structure. And now the acts that AfriForum, Solidarity, and I think the guys from Oranje, because they sort of also were involved in engaging the Trump administration and actually make calls. Now, I would say it's violating, threatening, and endangering the existence, independence, and the security of the Republic of South Africa under high treason. That is one of the 4 legs that you can stand on, because them saying to Trump and his administration to have sanctions against us and sort of have, it's now going to threaten our economic stability in our country, which could lead to job losses, people becoming unemployed, and that can lead to other circumstantial facts. And I think that is where we have to bring it back under high treason, but it's violating, threatening the stability of the republic called South Africa.
This interview portrayed the government as genocidal and racist maniacs who are terrorists, taking radical rhetorics uttered by radical individuals and radical groups and political parties, and implying that the government is pushing these rhetorics and also systematically teaching these rhetorics in schools and universities is simply not true. Now, in my opinion, a lot of the things that Ernest said were true, but he did leave out a lot of context and a lot of information to make things seem a lot worse than they actually are and were. Now, if Tucker was a true journalist, he would get somebody from the other side to speak against or argue against Ernest's points, and then leave it to the public to decide who's right or wrong. But if he does not do that, then he's simply pushing one side of the story or perpetuating propaganda from one side of the story. This is what it looks like when you listen to one side of the story, where a lot of key information and context is left out.